Hello and welcome to Change It Forward, a CFA Institute series where we talk to exceptional change leaders around the world, not about grand theories of leadership, but about the execution of leadership. My guests have walked the walk. They've taken leaps into the unknown, blazed a trail, found courage at critical moments, failed at other moments, dealt with curveballs, found help where necessary, built trust, fellowship, followership, demonstrated professional excellence. Through these conversations, we will spread the energy, the ingredients, the hacks for positive change in a variety of settings, with the gift of their insights on how they navigate the messy terrain of leadership. My guests will inspire other leaders, both emerging and incumbent leaders around the world, generating multiplier effect, thereby changing it forward. My guest today is Robert Gardner, co-founder of Redington. Founded in 2006 in London by Rob and David Konateahulu, Redington is today a highly influential firm of investment consultants. It's truly remarkable for an upstart to break into the arguably staid world of pensions advisory, an area dominated by a handful of large global players with long-standing relationships. So Rob, thank you for joining us and welcome to Change It Forward.
Hi, Lutfi, great to be here.
And so you went to join David in Merrill. So we worked at Deutsche Bank together. I went to Barclays, I went to Merrill. And from the outside, it was obvious that you guys were building something tremendous personal reputations with clients, helping them with interest rate, risk and liability management. My question is, you're fluent in Spanish. I remember that was the season when if you knew a Southern European language and you were derivatives trained as you were scooped up by the credit derivatives guys. I'm surprised you went for boring interest rates instead. How come?
Yeah, I think lots of people ask me the same question. I remember one person who at Merrill Lynch who said to me, Rob, you don't understand, credit derivatives is the rock star of financial markets. Only someone who works in investment banking would even describe what they do as being the rock star or something. But and was trying to recruit me over to the world of CDOs and credit derivatives and all that funky stuff. Look, I think I've always had an interest in the application of derivatives to solve clients' problems. So and often super long dated, and it's in my nature to be like long-term and patient. And so the clients I've always worked with are insurance companies and pension funds with extremely long dated liabilities. And really the goal was to manage those liabilities using derivatives. And normally the biggest risks were interest rate and inflation risk, not credit risk. So that's how I ended up there. And that's why I stayed in interest rates and inflation.
And was it around that time when you did these quanto trades, whatever they are?
Yeah, so the backstory to that was I joined Deutsche. Well, I left Deutsche to join David at Merrill Lynch. He'd been advising insurance companies on how to manage the guaranteed annuity options embedded in some of their policies. And that's how we then got into advising pension funds on hedging out their interest rate and inflation risk. But we had a client who not only had guaranteed annuity options, so the policyholder had the right to exercise an option, that was also linked to the value of the fund, and the value of that fund was linked to the value of UK equities, so to the FTSE 100. So you've got the policyholder has an option to exercise an annuity or not. And if interest rates are very low, the policyholder definitely wants to exercise that because they get to lock in a much higher annuity rate. But also the amount they can exercise is at £100,000, £120,000 is a function of what's happened to the FTSE. So incredibly complicated life insurance policy. And at the time, new regulation had been coming out about holding capital. And this insurance company had a big sort of asset liability mismatch and therefore capital that they had to hold. So we spent a long time working with them and figuring out how you could use a series of interest rate swaps and swaptions to hedge out that risk. But the really hard thing was the notional of those swaps and swaptions had to be linked to the level of the FTSE. And that's what a quanto is.
It's incredible that you are able to position something like that, which on the face of it is very complex if you're not contextualizing it, very long dated, and with a client class that is considered to be extremely conservative. So I guess that there's a lesson in sales over there that if you contextualize it for the problem, then you can make that connection. Let me move to what you did immediately after that. You did something I thought was quite silly. You left 2006, a booming period for investment banking, and you didn't leave to join a dot-com or a platform company, but you went to compete independently with the likes of Mercury and Willis Towers Watson. Why would you do something like that?
Yeah, look, the main reason was at Merrill, we love what we did. We loved helping clients solve their problems. We've always loved helping that. And we genuinely thought there was a better way for pension funds to manage their assets and liabilities. The issue was we were tarnished because we were seen as investment bankers trying to sell a product or a solution. And it was easy to kind of rubbish our motivations and therefore unpick it. And so we just thought, why don't we go and be, part of the solution? What if, because what would happen is we'd recommend these ideas and they'd say, well, look, why don't you speak to our investment consultant? And then they'd like shoot it out the sky. And we were like, no, they just don't get it. And so what better way? There's no better way to go in and do that. Crucially, though, Dowd and I had massive domain knowledge, right? We understood pensions, we understood derivatives, and then we understood the context that went around that, the lawyers, the actuaries. In anything that you need to go into, you need to have deep domain expertise. And so we had investment banking, capital markets expertise. And because of the work we've been doing with pensions and insurance companies, we had sort of pensions and insurance contextual knowledge.
So the intermediaries were gatekeepers from your point of view. So you thought, why don't we do that ourselves? And then how'd you go about it? Because I presume you need a bit of a team and you would need clients. Is there a bit of a chicken and egg there? And one definition of a leader is someone who's able to break circularity. So how did you do that? How did you get clients to give you business to begin with?
Well, the way you break circularity is you make it into a spiral that goes round and round and round and round and expires and expands in a forever expanding model. And so it is both. You need clients and you need people. Without clients, you don't have any revenue. But as you grow, you need people to look after those clients. And it's the age-old debate, what comes first, the client or your team or your culture? Our first client was the Royal Mail, and specifically a guy called Frank Shanella. And he took massive career risk hiring Dawid and Rob from Reddington Partners. We had no offices. We used to work in Dawid's attic and my spare bedroom. We used to print. We didn't have a printing services like we had at Deutsche Bank and Merrill Lynch. We had the FedEx, the Kinko shop, where you could email them at midnight and go and pick it up at 6 a.m. and then run into the client's offices. But I think Frank he saw in Dawid and I something he couldn't buy anywhere else. So the interesting thing about Frank is he bought Dawid and me. He didn't buy Reddington. And in his contract, although it was Reddington Partners LLP, the contractual thing, he wrote my name in and Dawid's name. He says, I've done a favor for you guys because now on, you need to convince people to hire Reddington and not hire you guys.
Wow.
And so we got appointed in the summer of 2006. We'd only just set up in May 2006. And I remember having Christmas lunch with him in sort of December 2006, where we were talking about why he did that. And that was just so lucky that happened so early on in our
what did he say? Why did he do that? Why would he do that?
Good guy, top guy. I mean, I'm forever grateful. At Reddington in one of the offices, we've made a post stamp of him. So like how the British stamp has a picture of the Queen, we've made a stamp which has a picture of the silhouette of Frank Shanella, because he will forever be our first client and therefore our most important client. It's you never forget your first client.
So kindness of others is also perhaps part of the mix, part of the formula. How about hiring people? Why would anyone want to work for this company that you just set up?
I mean, look, the first few people we hired into my flat and into Dowd's attic, I remember interviewing some guy in my spare bedroom, and that someone else joined us, and she used to work on the kitchen table in our flat, which was an open plan flat. So you had like the kitchen and the living room all in one area. We had a dining room table in the middle, and she used to sit there on her laptop working while I used to work in my bedroom. So looking back on it, you think, why on earth would you join these kind of crazy cats? Look, I think Dowd and I had a very clear and compelling vision of what we wanted to do. We said we wanted to do to pensions what Jamie Oliver had done for school food. You know, by that point, we had a brilliant client. We had Royal Mail. So out of nowhere.
Say that again. I love that analogy. You want to do for pensions?
So we wanted to do, so we actually wrote this in our FSA application form when we set up.
No way.
We said, so it's the opening line of our FSA application in May 2006. We want to do to pensions what Jamie Oliver did for school food. And at the time, just to explain that, Jamie Oliver, who's this famous chef in the UK, had a belief that school food could be healthy and affordable. The issue in the UK is that basically we were giving children horrible school food that was cheap to make and unhealthy. And he was trying to reframe the thinking. And that was our idea. We were like, people see pensions as something that is dull or expensive, but it's so important for the functioning of society as we get older, that we wanted to transform the way that people thought about pensions.
Wow. Can I ask, going through that spiral, so we know about your first client, how did that scale? Was there a compounding process? Is it word of mouth? How did it build up?
Look, the whole of Reddington is a compounding process, whether it's the size of our team or the number of clients or our revenues. You know, Reddington has had a sustained CAGR of 15 to 20% for the last 15 years. Now, it's easier to do in the beginning because, you know, small numbers, it gets harder as you grow. So yeah, you're right. We're not like a tech firm that has this massive exponential growth rate. It's just this idea of ordinary things consistently done creates extraordinary results. And so when we got the Royal Mail as a client, we used that money to hire and build a team. And then with that money, we then got other clients. So I think our second client was the Royal Bank of Canada Pension Fund in the UK. That is still a client. Both Royal Mail and Royal Bank of Canada Pension Fund are still clients of Reddington today, 15 years later.
Wow. And there was something else you were building on the side, a community, if I remember correctly, a platform. Tell us a bit about that, please, because that was very much ahead of its time.
Yeah, so actually, I think you're referring to Mallow Street. So our second office, so in 2007, we moved out of Dowd's attic and out of my flat into an office on the corner of Old Street Roundabout, which if you would go to today is like super cool, sexy, trendy. You've got Adobe's office. I promise you, in 2006, this was probably an area that you probably felt a little bit uncomfortable. There was a good, you know, there was a general aroma of hashish in the air. It was that kind of part of London, right? It wasn't where you were a leading pension consultant to some of the biggest pensions in the UK and around the world. But the road that we were on, that road off Old Street Roundabout, is called Mallow Street. And when we set up Reddington was at the same time that Twitter only got founded in 2006, LinkedIn, Facebook. And I remember joining LinkedIn very early on and joining Twitter. And it was this space, this wonderful idea that you could share ideas and concepts with people all over the world. So I've got Twitter friends in South Africa and Australia that I have never met, but we have been tweeting about pensions, #pensions, for over 15 years. And it's this kind of concept called the wisdom of the crowds. The problem that social media has is now you've got all the negatives of social media, but the good of social media is still there. That what if like-minded people can share brilliant ideas, and it doesn't matter that you're in Singapore or Australia or South Africa, that we can share these ideas and be connected by our ideas. And so the idea of Mallow Street was, what if we could take this wisdom of the crowd, that the problem with pensions is it's such a wicked problem. It is an intractable problem, not just in the UK, around the world, even in Singapore. It is a massive, massive problem. We're all living longer. People aren't saving enough. People will run out of money before they die. Solving it requires hugely complicated systems change, mindset change, government change, company change, individual changes. And so the idea was, what if we can convene people to share their ideas, to bring in actuaries, to bring in trustees, to bring in investment consultants and fund managers and investment banks, and create this community through open sharing, we could all get better. And so the idea behind Mallow Street is we can create a better retirement for everyone if we just get together and share our ideas.
Right. So building a community based on a shared interest, a shared problem, and of course some domain expertise as well, I suppose.
But crucially, we did this in 2009 when we set it up. But your average pension fund trustee and actuary was not a fan of social media. They were not on Facebook, they were not on LinkedIn, and they were not on Twitter. So we were definitely ahead of our time. It's fair to say Mallow Street has only become successful 10 years after it was founded. 2019 is when it really took off.
I see. How about setbacks along the way? How do you deal with curveballs? How do you regroup? How do you course correct? Any examples that come to mind?
I mean, yeah. I mean, even in my career, even this year, I must have had about 3 or 4 major curveballs. I think, look, the truth is, it never gets easier. You just get better. You look at the problems. I look at some of the problems we had in like 2009 and 2010, and they felt intractable and unsolvable, but somehow you find a way and you solve them. And then as you go through your career, I'm guessing that that's the definition of leadership, right? You end up with a team of people who do stuff. It's when things go wrong, how do you respond? What do you do? And then how do you get through that issue? Right. So my view is that there will always be bumps in the road. That is the road. The road has bumps. So kind of customize yourself to bumps in the road. And it's how you respond both individually and collectively that ensures that you get through those.
Is there anything in particular that you wish you had done differently now that you look back with hindsight?
I mean, many things. I mean, of course. I mean, I think that's the whole point, right? Is that the key thing is, do you learn from your mistakes? I think one of the things I've learned is, when something is facing us, I go, oh, okay, I had that problem before, and I learned, and you don't make that same mistake twice. That's the key thing. I think the hardest point, and this is why a team is so important. If you're on your own, I mean, the benefit that Dowd and I had was that we were co-founders. It's the best thing you can do is pause and stop and not panic and assess the situation. But we all know when you're in the middle of it, the red fog comes down, our emotions come down. I mean, you've got to remember, 10 years ago, no one was talking about meditation. There wasn't an app that you could listen to kind of get in the zone. People didn't talk about 4-second breathing techniques. Everything was a bit like go, 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 go. And it was almost just like grit your teeth and solve the problem. But actually, normally the best thing to do is just stop. And if you can, get together 1 or 2 people and just say, okay, can we clearly identify the problem? And let's work through it in a really structured way. It's so easy to say, but in the moment, it is almost impossible to do.
By the time of your 10th anniversary, 2016, and I remember going to see you and David in your offices. It was just behind the Deutsche Bank. What was the street?
Austin Friars.
Austin Friars, exactly.
Yeah.
And I saw multiple award tombstones on display, and one of them was the best new growth firm of the last 20 years. That's just within 10 years of operation. Were you, by that time, did you feel that you were making a difference?
Yeah, look, the best compliment I've ever had has been from competitors. So competitors at Aon or Mercer, Willis Towers Watson, who say, look, not only have you you and Dawid done a phenomenal job in building Redington and helping clients, but you forced us to become better. You forced us to raise our game, and that's better for all clients. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's just, to me, that there is no finer compliment.
That's right. That's right. It's like a spokesperson or a team that raises the game for the league as a whole, I guess. So it's pretty obvious to me by now that if there are two types of people, Rob, one that is driven by a vision of the end state and work backwards from that, and then you have the other type, which is, what's the problem in front of me? Let me solve that, and then I'll move on to the next one and go through the gauntlet in that way. Whereas, I think you like to keep the end in mind. Were there moments when you felt that what got you here wouldn't take you to the next level, and so you had to make some fundamental changes? Do you do that regularly?
Yeah, all the time. Well, there's a brilliant book, which is What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend reading that book. And that was an inflection point at our 10th anniversary, because it was on our 10th anniversary that we'd already decided to transition our leadership to a next level. And we appointed a guy called Mitesh, who's the CEO of Reddington today, 5 years later. And actually we appointed Stuart Breyer as CEO of Mallow Street, and he's still the CEO 5 years later. That's always true. It's, it doesn't matter whether in nature we see this all the time, right? A snake has to shed its skin to grow and evolve and develop. And
organizations don't do that very often. It's very hard to overcome organizational inertia. You can always say, this is how we've done it. Look at the success. We just won an award, for heaven's sake. Why should we change things?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, most organizations struggle to do that, but that's why most organizations go into long-term decline. Microsoft is a brilliant example, right? Microsoft market cap in 1999 was what, $600 billion, one of the largest market caps. It then sank and it basically went nowhere. It wasn't until the new CEO came in with his whole renew and refresh strategy that it took off. Now, don't get me wrong, Microsoft never went into long-term decline, but the success of Microsoft today as one of the largest companies on the planet is as a direct result of that renewal and refresh of the culture and the organization in order to go from where it was languishing 4 or 5 years ago to world-class firm today.
Does it give people motion sickness? Do they feel like, oh, come on, we're working towards that vision and now you're changing the rules of the game?
I'm sure people describe me as giving them motion sickness. I think the dark side of my style and approach would just be the sort of frenetic pace and level of change. And there's this model called flow, and I suppose it's this kind of idea of rate of change. And any organization or any individual has this kind of concept called the rate of extinction. So we're all basically becoming extinct all the time, even individually. If you're not getting better, if you're not studying, if you're not taking your CFA exams, listening to podcasts, you are atrophying and you are dying, you are decaying. So we all have to raise our game as husbands, as wives, as fathers, as mothers, as leaders, continuously, and as an organizations. The issue though is getting the speed at which you do it right. And I have definitely been guilty of doing it too fast. And if you do it too fast, people struggle and fall over and fail. And that's been my biggest learning of the last 3 years, that you can't just set off on a race. People have described me and say, like, Rob, it's like playing rugby with you and you're at the other end of the pitch and the rest of your team are back there. If the team are not with you, that doesn't work.
So was David a moderating influence to that, or Mitesh maybe? Are there different personalities from that point of view?
I think David and I are probably in the same camp of sort of wanting to charge ahead and change the world. Mitesh and the leadership team that are in place at Reddington and Stu Breyer are definitely a much more sort of moderating influence on the rate of pace. And the trick in any team is to have a mixture of you need someone who sets the vision and strategy, but you also need someone who focuses on the problems in the here and now. You need, like anything, right? The magic is in the mix of all those skills and behaviors. I think the job of the leader is to convene them and point them in the kind of single unifying direction and keep the drumbeat going so you keep moving together. So what drives you now? So So, I'm very fortunate. I have deep domain knowledge still around fixed income derivatives. You taught me how to do the contingent 3-option hedge. I can still remember that to today, 20 years later. So I understand derivatives. I understand pension funds. I understand the investing and asset management. I now work in wealth management. But actually, as a young person, I specialized in geography and glaciology. I understand climate change. Climate change is the biggest risk that we face as a planet. And what's happened, and you'll know this better than I, because you're an economist in London School of Economy, we used to live in a system where the economy was based on land, people, and capital. And what the last 200 years did is we discovered this thing called coal and oil, which was like the elixir of life. And we were able to extract 5 million years worth of Earth and turn it into motion and accelerate global population from 1 billion to 8 billion people, at the same time destroying our planet. So land has been on a long-term secular decline. We have basically deflated the value of land to the point that we have an economy that now is self-destroying itself. Now, I know this sounds controversial and some people will think, what on earth am I talking about? But we are on a pathway in the next 30 years, unless we do something different, where we will, this is not a Greta Thunberg thing or a David Attenborough thing. This is the reality that there will be more floods, more hurricanes, more droughts. If you like red wine, as I do, you won't be able to drink Rioja. And we need
and
to
you're putting your money where your mouth is, right? You're directing funds.
Well, the point is not just that. That's what I do in my day job. We need to have an entire systems change about how we think about the economy. We need to put value on land. We need to put value on those trees. What if I told you that the million trees that are being planted in Singapore are worth more than the MBS hotel? That'll blow your mind. What if we put a true ecological value on the elephants that live in Africa? There's been a 90% decline in elephants. We kill elephants for $50,000, and yet the carbon value of an elephant over its lifetime is worth $2 million, but no one values it.
Right.
And every bank and every asset manager who is listening to this call will need to start buying carbon credits and offsetting their carbon next year, the year after that, for the next 5 to 10 years. Climate and carbon is the #1 systemic change opportunity for the next 50 years. And that's what I'm passionate about. The average man or woman will die. So a man in the UK will die 10 years, or will run out of money 10 years before he dies. A woman will run out of money 12 and a half years before she dies. In Japan, it's about 20 years. And that's because we're living longer, which is great. The number of centenarians on the planet is doubling every decade. So when you got married 20 years ago, there were about 125,000 centenarians on the planet. There are now 560,000 centenarians. The number of centenarians in Singapore has been doubling very, very quickly. So we're all living longer, but we are not saving enough to sustain ourselves. And our systems and states can no longer afford demographically to look after our aging population. So one of the foundations of doing that is teaching children about money, how it works and how to make it work for them. So this idea that you can earn it, keep it, and grow it. But that system is entirely compatible with the second system that I told you about, because all we need to do is transition our money from what's called a linear economy of take, make, waste, to a circular economy. And there's some brilliant examples of circular economy. Nike, you can buy new trainers and they're made from recycled materials. Sony, 99% of their electronics are made from recycled materials. Singapore Airlines have just committed to net zero. We already 5 years ago, we built a plane, a solar panel plane that flew around the entire planet on solar panel on free energy. So Singapore are leading the way. In fact, Singapore's strategy in this place blows my mind. So what if everyone got the Singapore mindset? And what if we redirected our capital from over here to here? This will blow your mind. Have you heard of a firm in America called NEE?
No.
So recently, they just overtook the market cap of Chevron and Exxon. Exxon used to be one of the largest market caps companies in the world, and it's been a long-term decline. This is a small US utility that, guesses what? It generates energy to meet the world's needs from wind and solar panel. Its market cap is now $150 billion, and its market cap is now bigger than the market cap of Chevron. and bigger than the market
Amazing.
cap of Exxon. That is the canary in the coal mine. And most people haven't yet figured it out. And this will transform the world in the next 20 years. These two things, save your acorns, earn it, keep it, grow it, where you invest your money, and transforming the economy, are all part of that spiral we talked about at the beginning.
I have a final question, which is something I ask to a lot of leaders, which is, what would you say is your leadership signature? So what's that one thing that about your leadership style that people will recognize and say, yep, that's classic you, that's classic Rob Gardner?
I'll cheat. It's two things. I think I inspire people and I empower people. I inspire people to teach their children about money. I inspire people to think differently about how we invest their money. And I give people the tools and the frameworks to know how to do it and let them get on and do it themselves.
You've done exactly that just now, Rob. You've inspired and you've empowered other leaders with some of the hacks and insights that you shared with them for their own leadership journey. You're a powerhouse of purpose, passion, and persistence. Thank you so much for joining us today. All the best until next time.
Thanks, Luke. Take care.
It was an honor to speak with Rob Gardner. The passion, the drive, the focus on successful execution, turning circular traps into positive spirals. There's a lot there to inspire leaders across industries. This is the type of conversation you can enjoy in every episode of Change It Forward. I'm Lutfi Siddiqui on behalf of CFA Institute. Thank you for joining us. See you again next time.